I hope that you have had a wonderful week. What's going on? I hope that you enjoyed Valentine's Day. I see we're doing a thing now. I don't know how that works if you're not in a relationship. What is it? Galentine? But in any way, I hope that you loved on who loved you and you loved on yourself because it's important for you to really love yourself as well. But I am so excited to be having this show this Sunday. This is wonderful. So if you saw the flyer, then you notice two things. The first thing you notice is that this is pre-recorded. The second thing you should have noticed if you read from top to bottom is that in honor of Valentine's Day, I know it was on Wednesday, but in honor of Valentine's Day, we want to talk about relationships. And you saw that we're going to be asking the question, is our relationships a matter of the heart or the head or both? And so we want to delve into relationships and the nature of relationships. And I am so honored to have our guest on. And so we want to jump right into it. Let me also say again that yes, this is pre-recorded. But if you are tuning in today, I encourage you to please, please, please still post your questions, your comments, especially those questions, because we want to gather those questions and we're going to have Dr. E come back on and we're going to answer some of those questions. Fingers crossed we'll be able to get her back on our next show. But if not, definitely we're going to have her back on. So I'm encouraging you to continue to tune in and to watch the show and to post your questions and comments. But anyway, sisterhood, help me welcome our guest. Let me just read her bio to you. Dr. Edrica D. Richardson is a licensed marriage and family therapist in multiple states in the U.S. and an American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy approved supervisor. She works with adolescents, couples, and families throughout the Bahamas and the U.S. currently, but she has clients all over the world. Her clinical specialties include relationship issues, which we're going to delve into, individual issues, which spill over and cause relationship issues, family counseling, and life coaching, to name a few. As a therapist with over a decade of expertise, she uses a collaborative lens and invites her clients into a strong therapeutic alliance through meaningful conversations. Her main goal is to help clients become their full selves in both their personal and professional lives. In addition to clinical practice, Dr. E, as we're going to call her, and she doesn't mind us calling her that, Dr. E has been teaching undergraduate and graduate students for the past 13 years and supervising for the last 7 years, both in major U.S. colleges and universities and the Bahamas. Additionally, she co-hosts a bi-weekly Bahamian radio show about mental health and relationships and has been a featured guest on many other radio, online, and TV shows, both locally and internationally. Her first professionally published books on relationships will be on all platforms March 26, 2024, and we're going to talk about this book. Just even the title alone, you're just going to want to buy the book. While she continues to spread the word on the importance of relationships and mental health through speaking engagements. Sisterhood, please help me welcome to Hey Sis Coffee and Conversation, Dr. E.
Hi.
Dr. E, it is so good to have you here with us. Yes. And so that's a lot. We want to get right into this relationships. You know, Valentine's just went Wednesday. And so sometimes people are depressed about it. Sometimes people are excited. Sometimes people just don't care.
Right.
And, you know, not everybody celebrates it. Well, we're going to talk about relationships because that's the most important thing, right?
Yes.
And, you know, one of the things about Valentine's is we always celebrate it as romantic love, but you can just celebrate You know,
I always say Valentine's Day is self-love day. And I preach that because I believe that if you're not in a relationship with yourself, you really shouldn't be in a relationship with anybody else. So I know over the years it's been commercialized only as a couples or romantic holiday, but who's more romantic than you with yourself? Meaning, why not dress up? Why not take yourself on a date? Why not buy yourself something special? Because sometimes we need holidays like that to remind ourselves that we are important to us. And sometimes we can forget that because we're so busy doing things for everybody else or building our careers or making sure the kids are good that we sometimes forget to say, hey, what about me? What can I do for me? How can I make me better? And all day yesterday, actually a couple days ago, Valentine's Day, everything feels blurry, but I was just spending that time I was on high that day because I'm just looking and thinking about myself and thinking about how proud I am of me. Because sometimes you need that moment. I don't know if you saw recently, I think the actress Niecy Nash, I think is her name, and when she did her speech, when she won, I think it was an Emmy recently, she said, and lastly, but most importantly, I want to thank me.
like me,
And
yeah.
I
And
love,
prior to her doing that,
yes.
Snoop did that when he got his star. He was like, I'd like to thank me for not giving up on me, for believing in me.
And people don't understand. People will be like, "Oh, that seems a little like narcissistic."
Self-centered.
And
Yes, yes,
right.
yes.
But you know what it is? It's an appreciation for yourself. And if you can't appreciate yourself, then really, what type of relationship do you have with yourself? And that's just a moment to look in the mirror and say, you know what? After all these things I went through, I did it. And that's an accomplishment. So that's what I think Valentine's means for me.
Well, some people will say, "Oh, I'm celebrating myself." They feel like maybe that's desperate or lonely, or like you said, it is a situation where maybe they feel like, "Oh, that's me feeling myself." But like you say, you can use that to really appreciate where you are and to love on yourself. Maybe to treat yourself. Sometimes we deny ourselves certain things, so you use that day to
Yes.
treat yourself. And really and truly though, it's been so commercialized. It's really about love and romance, and
Right.
you could really begin to feel left out or very lonely if you don't have that significant other, that person in your life to celebrate with. So I want to really, let's just get into that and talk about those kinds of relationships, that romantic relationship, and how we see that going now. One of the things, you would hear people say is sometimes it's better to love who love you. And, by that, they mean you may be interested in someone and they aren't very interested in you, but there's someone else who's really interested in you. And perhaps that's the person that you should focus on. You
Right.
agree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
I actually remember getting that message too from one of my aunts growing up, and she said, "Make sure that if you ever decide you're going to get married, marry the person who loves you way more than you love them." And at the time, I was like, "Why would I do that?" But as I got older, I realized how important that is because we know that love is not enough to sustain a relationship, but what love does, it provides a great cushion and foundation for when things are happening within a relationship. So I do think, and I really think this, especially for women, because I find that when a man loves a woman, that there are certain things he's willing to do and certain lengths he's willing to go because of that depth of the love. And so even when we think about how women go the extra mile for their partners, a lot of times they will say, because I love you, I'm doing this. And
Right.
so that actually, I do believe that is true, that you really should go and for a long-term committed relationship, be with a person who loves you way more than you love them, or not even way more, who loves you a lot, and they're actively showing you that love, not just saying it
Right,
verbally, but
right.
they're really expressing it to you. And sometimes we miss those people because we have such ideas in our minds about what our person should be or what they should look like. And so I do agree with that. I think it's important to, because sometimes that person too can help you learn to love yourself a little bit more because they see things in you that you may not be able to see in yourself.
Right, right. But is it fair to that person though, if your interest isn't, I guess, as deeply rooted in them as they are in you? Is it really, are you being fair to that person?
Well, love always has ebb and flows. Anyone who's been in a long-term relationship will. I've heard it said many times from many of the couples I work with. I I like you, but I don't love you right now. And
I've heard the opposite. I love
oh
you,
yeah,
but I don't
you're
like
right.
you right now. Oh,
I love
okay,
you.
okay,
I don't
okay.
like you right now. I mixed it up. You are completely correct. And what that means is that because that love is so strong, there are certain things that we built in this relationship that right now, when you're not maybe being the person that I like at the time, because maybe you're annoying me, maybe you're frustrating, maybe you're not listening, the love will cushion the relationship while we go through this tiff or while it goes through figuring out why my emotions are at this place. I think that when we look at the history of loving relationships, that was not how relationships started out in the first place, especially long-term ones. And I like to point out the arranged marriages. And the reason I say that is because those relationships don't start out of any type of romantic love.
Right.
They built it over time. And the success rate of arranged marriages has always been higher than those of ones of people meeting on their own, spending that time courting and doing everything else.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You don't get that, right? You don't really get that. You think, what? An arranged marriage? No way.
But here's another way to think about it. As we get older, especially when you're trying to date, what is the first thing we say? We say to our friends and family, "Hey, if you know anybody, hook us up." Right?
Right.
Maybe make a connection. The reason we want that is because people around you usually have a better idea of you sometimes than you can see for yourself. Meaning, like they can see things that you may not be aware of. And so what arranged marriages does is that they put the family puts all that information together and says, here are a few candidates. I think these two personalities,
Right.
these
You
two,
really click with this person.
and so what's the difference? I think
That's
it's
an
rewarding,
arrangement.
right? It's that's we just look at it as
But you know, back then, arranged marriages didn't even work like that. It was just okay for whatever reason. Maybe it's to continue to make a strong alliance between two families. It's like, okay, your daughter, my son, they're going to get
Mhm.
married. But we're not saying, you're not saying that 100% of worked all the times, but it did, and they grew to love each other, I guess.
Yes, it did. You learned how to grow to love each other. So you didn't start out with romantic love, but over time you learned and you grew together and you grew in love. And it's not for every relationship, just like not all relationships, when you meet the person, you stay the same way. But what happened with that is it made you look at love differently, because how is love being used as a tool within relationships, right? And
Right.
so I don't think it's unfair, because what happens I see a lot of times in relationships is the person who starts out with a little bit more love, at times, because of the ebb and flow of people, will pull back at some point, and then the other person pushes a little more, and that's when you
Okay.
see it, right? And that's what we call a pursuer distancer in a relationship. And that cycle
I'm
is
sorry. What does that say that again? It's called a,
pursuer distancer. So somebody
okay,
pursues, the other person distances
person's
a little bit. It's
distant.
almost like the catch game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
kind of a cat and
right.
mouse kind of a thing.
And that's kind of how romantic love has been over time. And so I don't. I think if a person is loving and in love with you, just because yours may be at a 90 and theirs may be at a 75, it doesn't mean that you're lying to them or not fully committed in the relationship. Sometimes our love grows over time. Like I've had
Right.
couples who
It
will
may
say,
have started off as a 75, but 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you're full at a 90, 95, 100.
absolutely. There are couples who moments in the relationship create more love, right? Maybe there was a tragedy that happened and you guys bonded over that. Or maybe it was the fact that there was some financial thing that you worked through, or just that partner being so supportive. And
Right.
that became the thing that clicked on that other 25%, right? And so I think people who do it genuinely wouldn't do it from a place of I'm just doing it because I know you love me more, but I love you and I know I can see the growth in the
Right.
relationship.
And you make a decision. You make a
Yeah.
decision, right? That's
Yeah.
not necessarily a hard decision in the sense that, oh, I just feel all of, all of the tinglies, all of the everything
Right.
people say you're supposed to feel. But you make a decision that this is someone that I can work with, be with. I can see myself with this person. And as you work and grow and live together,
Right.
that bond gets stronger. Which then brings me to my other question. Do you believe, I liken it to the song, everybody, just about, recent weddings, maybe about 5 years ago, the one he kept for me, the one, my soulmate, right? So then you're saying all of this, but do you believe that there is one person specifically designed just for you, your soulmate? Like that is the person, like all of the people in the world, there's one person who is specifically for you. Do you believe that? Or do you believe that, hey, we can have chemistry with more than one person and we can make it work with more than one person? Sometimes we love a person, but it's toxic and we move on
Right.
and we love someone else. So you tell me, what is your, what do you think? Or
So
you think, hey, there's one person who was stamped in their design. They are supposed to be with Dr. E.
absolutely not. I actually believe that I do believe that you can have soulmates over time, but I also don't believe all soulmates are romantic in nature.
Mm,
Because I found that in some friendships, you find that soul connection, that deep
that's
love,
your
that
person.
as your person, and there is no romantic feeling at all. We all have that person. I don't know if anybody who's watching or listening has watch Grey's Anatomy. So I'm a big Grey's Anatomy fan. And one thing that Meredith and Christina was like, you're my person and you're my person. And if you get the idea of a person, what a person meant is that you're the one who can understand me even when I'm not communicating verbally. You know what's going on. We could sit in that space of quiet. We could also hang out and make a lot of noise. We could just do things because we flow together. That's what I think about when I think of like a soulmate, a soul connection, because that can come in the friendship form and that can come in the romantic love form. I think that there are different people you're going to love throughout the course of your life because life love requires different phases. And so if you can grow with that and the person you're with, who's your romantic partner, can grow with that with you, they may be your soulmate or they may not. So I don't think everyone gets a chance sometimes to meet or marry their soulmate. Like again, it could be their friend who's there, that deep connection, or it could just be somebody they met at a period of point in life, or they may never get a chance to meet them. But I think we know what our true desires are when we sit down to really evaluate ourselves and what those core needs are. And that lets us know a little bit more what is in our soul. What is it that we're really craving out of relationships?
And the reason I think about that too is, God forbid you meet someone, you're in a relationship and you say, this is the ideal person for me.
Mhm.
They are everything. They checked off all the boxes,
Right.
everything. You love this person. This person is genuinely committed to me. Suppose for some reason they're tragically taken away from you. But then years later or whatever, you meet someone else. You
Absolutely.
connect with that person again and you love that person. And then you begin to build a life. You two get married and you build a life together. So, what does that mean then? That if you think of it in terms of that, does that mean that you have two soulmates? That there are two people who were made for you? You know what I mean?
So you can have, that's why I think you can have multiple soulmates, but not everybody you love and marry may be your soulmate, right? So that person who might have passed away might have been your actual soulmate, and the other person may just be somebody you're in love with and can build a life with, but they may not be your soulmate. Or you might be lucky enough to meet another soulmate through the course of your life. Some people get just that lucky over time. And and they put that I say they put that great energy pull in the world, and they figure out where that person is and figure out how to get there, and so they meet at just the right time. But I do think if we look at it, then people would only be married one time, right? If that's
Right.
the case. But as we can see that people, especially as you change and evolve in life, that person who even might have been your soulmate initially, or who you thought might have been your soulmate because you're growing and changing, might have been your soulmate at that point in life. What if you look at it that way versus saying it has to be this one person for the whole
Right.
duration of my life? So I think it could be more than one person,
It
definitely.
could be more than one person. Okay, so let's say now that and listen, guys, you're tuned in. You are free to disagree. We're having a wonderful conversation, and I'm not saying that the person you're with is not your soulmate. That is for you and that person to determine.
Yeah.
We're just putting these things out here, right? We're just having this wonderful talk with Dr. E. So when you look now, then, do you find that do you think that you limit yourself if you're saying, I need whomever, if you're single, whomever I meet, they have to be my,
Soulmate.
if I don't get that feeling or whatever, it's not happening. Do you think that we limit ourselves if we do that?
I think we do, because sometimes we meet people on our great journey of life who may be great partners for us during that point in our lives, right? So think about everybody who's listening right now and watching. Think about your dating history. There are people you met, and if you really reflect on it, you needed to meet that person at that right time, either because they helped you grow, maybe they taught you a lesson, maybe they helped you in a certain area of your life that you didn't have information or insight at that particular time. So I believe every person has a place in your life, and they may not go the distance, so that doesn't mean you shouldn't date or try to get to know them.
Okay. And let's talk about dating. I want to talk about that. Yes, please feel free. I'm about to drink some water myself, so don't worry about it. But what I would like, let's talk a bit about dating, because I what are your thoughts on dating? Sometimes people they're dating with a purpose, with a reason, and then sometimes they're just dating to see what's out there.
Right.
Is that a healthy thing, or every time that you decide that I'm dating, and then again, what do we consider dating, right?
That's where
And
we
think
are.
of it in terms of our society.
I think we have to first start on what do we consider dating, because when you lived and dated across the world, you realize that your culture really dictates a lot of what you consider to be dating. I can say, with living in different places in the world at different points in my life, that what I grew up knowing as dating is not how I define dating for myself. And so a lot of times what I tell people who are interested in dating is figure out your definition, and then make sure you communicate that with the person who you're interested in dating, because you'd be surprised how people have different definitions of the same word, but have expectations that
Right.
somehow telepathically you will align on these thoughts. That's not how it works. We have to communicate. My definition of dating is that you will get to know several different people at the same time, letting them all know your expectations, and putting your boundaries as to what can and cannot happen in that process of getting to know. That's what I define it as, dating
Right.
to know several different people. Then after, let's say you're getting to know 3 different people at the same time. That may mean that you may go out for a coffee, maybe might go for a hangout at a museum, or even a walk in the park, or by our beautiful beaches. In that time, you're getting to know them, so you're asking questions, you're becoming inquisitive, and seeing if there is a connection that builds. After a period of time, and that's something that also needs to be discussed. Maybe after 30 days, you say, hey, I want to make this more exclusive, right? Exclusively date you. That may not yet mean a title, right? Exclusion means that I will no longer date those other 2 people, and I'm only going to date you right now. And in that period of us being exclusive, we can then decide to put a title on this relationship if we desire that. And again, this is something that should be communicated, so there's no
At the
expectation.
very beginning.
right? Or no mix up in feelings being hurt or feeling like you're being misled. And then from that point where you're exclusively dating and deciding to maybe title the relationship, you could say, hey, what is our goal in dating? I find that a lot of people don't discuss the goal of dating, but again, have expectations. And so I think that's how dating is evolved. In our culture, in our society.
I just want to say, Dr. E, you know, in our culture, first of all, we're not having that conversation, number one.
Absolutely not.
And if we have that conversation, if it's a male having that conversation with a female and saying, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm doing, he's no good. If it's a female saying that to a male, you know, we're going to put some really derogatory labels on her. Because if she went to the movies last night with John,
she must,
and John friends know that, and then they see her 2 nights later having, or 2 mornings later, having coffee with Joe.
Right.
What's going on?
And
she's all of those things.
We have to challenge those views, to challenge where did we get those ideas from, that if you're getting to know people. And I think what happened is that we associated that if you're getting to know people, somehow you must be sexually involved with them on some level. And because we associate the two things together, we automatically then put labels on people.
Right.
And that's incorrect, because a lot of people are not as sexually engaging as they're dating. Again, conversations that would have been had and how to communicate that with the person you're interested in dating. Because if I'm getting to know you, I may realize, like, after getting to know you, and I can talk about myself, there are some people I went on a few dates with, and after the second date, I was like, yeah, no, this
right.
You thought there was that initial attraction. Oh, that sounded good. Let's go to a second time. That second time, and then they say that one thing or two things, you realize your level of thinking, comprehension, and understanding and communicating were different. You're like, I'd rather not do this. And so that might help them eliminate themselves from the process. But we got to challenge those names that we give to people who are trying to get to know each other. If not, we get in the context of what we see now happening. Growing up, I remember, I could even think about this, like right after you got out of high school, or even in high school when you were dating, you start talking to somebody, just maybe communicating, not even like dating talk.
Y'all, as we used to call it back then, y'all going
together. And I'm like, when did that happen? Like, I just met Jay. We go to school together. I just said hello because we're in the same class. We work
but y'all two already sat together like twice. That's almost engagement.
Exactly. And I don't know why we put that pressure on people so fast. And maybe that's why they make very hasty decisions in getting into relationships they're not ready for. But what I challenge people to think about is that figure out what your definition of dating is.
Yeah.
And explain that, because like my friends and I are all very comfortable and content with our definitions of it. And we have conversations about it. And as a result of that, our worlds have evolved, right? Because the level of conversation is different and how we all see dating. Right. And please don't assume just because you're talking to somebody, because somebody's listening right now,
right?
Because you're talking to somebody does not mean y'all are dating. You want to be very clear about that.
And both of you need to be on the same page. But do you think there's also a fair, if you say that, because of our culture, even if you're interested in someone and you say, you know what, I'd like to see whatever, when you put that out there, they may then pull back and say,
Well, here's my rule of thumb with that. If you tell your truth to somebody and their response is that they can't handle it or they reject the truth, then that is probably not the best person that you would want to pursue a relationship with, because they weren't even open enough to listening to you.
Right, to what you were saying.
Right. And if somebody's not willing to listen to you to understand, that's not going to get better over the course of dating more. That they're telling you, they're showing you right now where their level of emotional intelligence is. And if that is where their level is, don't try to convince them that it's different. That is where it's at. And so we truly believe in being honest and expressing these things, and the person is not willing to listen. And this is the thing, when you listen, which is different from hearing, you listen so you can comprehend, offer a level of understanding so that you can respond and communicate effectively. what we tend to do is we hear something and we emotionally overreact sometimes without properly listening to what was said. And a person is just telling you, look, I want to be honest with you. This is how I feel. This is how I would like to see things go. Let me know if we're just on the same page. And the person's response to you is, one, I don't want to have that conversation. Or two, I don't really want to talk about that. I'm not interested in doing that. You have your answer as to where they're
Right
at.
there.
Don't spend the next 30 days, 3 years, 5 years
Trying to
trying to
figure out.
convince them to love you. That's literally what we do. We spend that time trying to convince them as to why we're the best choice.
Right, right. And so are you finding now in your practice, are you finding that women or, based on the ages that they are waiting longer to make those kinds of commitments?
Mm-hmm.
Or I should say, is it the female who is looking more for that commitment right up front? Or are you seeing a change where we're saying, you know what, I want to take my time. There's some things that I'd like to accomplish, and then
I'm seeing the latter. What has happened over time, especially I've seen with women, is before, when we look back at the history of relationships, dating, and even leading to marriage, it was a necessity, right? It was a necessity for survival and to pool resources for generations to kind of evolve, for families to grow. And as people had more access to resources, education, and freedom, they were allowed to make different choices. And what I've seen now, because I teach college, and one of the things I see when I look at the classroom is the disparity in gender, right? You can
right,
see the fact that 85% of all college class sizes are women, right?
hmm
And then you see if those who actually complete and graduate still leaves about 75% of just women who actually finish and graduate. And then they go into the workforce. And as a result of that, and they're building their career, they are waiting longer to get married because there's not a need anymore to rush for resources. They are now been
right.
able to manage, make, and maintain their own resources. And so it is delaying women from getting married a lot of times.
And
And
let me just say, we're not saying that you have to wait if you're in a healthy relationship and that's where you two are right now. You've talked about marriage and this is what you want to do. We're not saying, oh, you should just wait just to be counted as part of the statistics. If this is, after counseling,
yes,
because go to counseling, right? Because sometimes you think you're ready and then you go to counseling and you're like, well, okay, let's
no.
slow down. But we're just saying that this is the trend that we are seeing
Now.
now. This is
Yep.
the
And
trend that we're seeing now.
even with men, here's the opposite end of that trend.
Hmm.
So women are waiting a little longer until they get their careers more stabilized before they get married. Again, it's not all. Like we're saying, this is just the majority
Right.
of the population now, and where we see the shifts happening nationally, internationally. But what we also see at the end with men is because now there's such a small population of those men that are qualified to date those women. When I say qualified, meaning that they feel that they're an equal match, right? We always say when you get married, you should at least be equally yoked. And a lot of times what that equally yoked mean is that you can share things intellectually, you can share things emotionally, you can share things spiritually, and the list goes on. And so again, so 25% in the classroom I'm seeing, or 20% I'm seeing in the classroom are college students are men. Out of that, sometimes it's less than 15% that are actually graduating. And so when you see the comparison, it is a lot less men out there for the women who are their counterparts when we look at intellectual intelligence.
Right.
And as a result of that, that puts a greater disparity with men and whether or not they're choosing to get married early as well, because now they have such a wide variety of population
They want to catch up.
who they can pick and choose from. A lot of them I'm seeing now as the new shift with men is that they're choosing not to get married early, or they're choosing not to get married at all because now they have all of these women who are interested in dating them. And so now we see that also happening from men where they're saying, well, look, I can get married or I can be out here and I can date for a long time. And so they're waiting later. We see men
Right.
sometimes now not settling down and getting married till after 45.
Wow. So when you think about the whole relationship thing and you say it's a person, I feel that I'm at a point where I would love to be in a relationship. I believe that I'm ready. I don't know if we have these conversations with ourselves, but I think it's important that we do, right?
Right.
What are some of the things when we're saying I'm ready? What does that mean? What does that look like? When you say you're ready to be in a relationship, what does that look like?
If you're ready to be in a relationship, I'm going to assume that you've already been in the best relationship that is still evolving, which is the relationship with yourself. You should never get in a relationship romantically until you've had and solidified your identity. So we call it identity development. And identity development is so important to your life, not just a life cycle, to your life, because that lets you know when people ask you the question, who are you? You're not going to answer with just superficial external things, but you can answer from core internal values. That's the difference between people who have reached identity development in a healthy way versus those who have not, who, what we say, they stagnate, right? They can't figure it out. So they are what we call role confused, meaning role confused in not knowing what they want to do, where they want to do it at, who they should marry, if they should marry, what career they should, what path they should have. Because in the proper stages of identity development, that was theoried by a guy named Edrica Richardson. He said in that stage there are three parts to adult identity development. The first is figuring out who you are, and you spend your time answering those questions. What do I want to do with my life? Why do I want to do that with my life? Do I want to share my life with somebody else? What other things in my life do I want to pursue, question, challenge? And once that's solidified to the point that let's say you have a good sense of who you are, that when somebody asks you that question of who you are, you don't stumble, you don't hesitate. You could say, I am, and finish that statement. Then after that, he said the next stage of development is that you can find your partner, right? So now that you know who you are, you can then join with somebody else, right? And so you can strive for intimacy, true intimacy. True intimacy is that now I can be vulnerable with you, right? Into you see me. That's what intimacy means. Into you see me. That I can courageously put myself out there and decide to share my life with somebody else. And he
Is
said,
that a red flag? If you're in a relationship, but you don't feel like you have the space to be vulnerable with that person.
absolutely. Because the true definition of intimacy, people always think about physical intimacy. But the
Right.
true definition of intimacy is safety. Can I feel safe with and around you? Can I show my whole self? Right? Can I show my whole self? And I'm not talking about the people who wear makeup to go to bed and makeup in the morning before the other person wakes up, or the person who can't talk about hygiene issues, or even share the fact that growing up, this is really traumatic for me. That is sharing your whole self. And if you can't do that, I would strongly urge somebody to question, is this the person I'm really supposed to be with? Because
Right.
you should be able to share those things that are happening with you, that you are growing through, but also the things about you that may be challenges, right?
Right. That
And
are not so pretty.
that are not so pretty. And when you get to know yourself well enough, you can identify those things. You can say, you know what? I am not a neat person. So before we get married, let me just put that out there that this is not my strong suit. Or I'm not good with a budget. And then you could pinch hit to your partner and say, you take hold of this because I see that you're so much better at doing this than I am. And again,
Right.
that's the ebb and flow, reciprocity. You do a little this, I
I
do a little
think
of that.
I think that there's such a pressure for us as women to be everything. And so there isn't, and you know what? Fairly, and there may also be that pressure for the man, to make sure that you are firing on every cylinder. And so you see the areas that perhaps you're not so strong in, you see them as your weakness, as a deficiency, as a defect. And so it may be difficult for you to come out and say, you know what, I'm not that needy person. I am not good with money. I'm trying. I'm open to it, but I'm not as good as I should be to have those kinds of conversations, because when you are you feel this pressure to always be on,
Yeah.
have everything together, because you look at society and you look at these clips, these 30-minute, 1-minute clip of these women who work 23 hours of the day. They raise their children perfectly on schedule. They clean, they cook from scratch. And this is what you're trying to get to. And you keep failing, saying to yourself, I can't get it done.
The lies we tell ourselves. One of the things I always tell people, and this is a question I'm going to put out to the audience, and they can send us the feedback so we can answer this next time, is who are you outside of your relationship? If you cannot answer that question and you don't even know who that person is who exists outside the relationship, there is some time for pause and to figure that out. And so that's why it's so important for you to figure yourself out too before you get in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because what happens is when you then attach to somebody else by becoming romantically involved with them, a part of you gets put on pause. We don't think about it that way, but that's what happens because our identity becomes the relationship a lot of times for a lot of us. And if you don't have a strong sense of self prior to that, that becomes your full identity. And if something ever happens to that relationship,
you're completely lost.
You're destroyed. You are in complete disarray. You don't know what to do with yourself. I've had clients who were depressed. I mean, clinically depressed as a result of it. They were suicidal. And all of that is because their whole sense of self was enmeshed in that relationship, and it was not healthy. And so once a relationship ended, or there was some rift, sometimes it's not even the relationship ended, it was some rift in a relationship, they fell apart.
Wow.
So one of the things I tell anybody before you get in a relationship, spend some time with you. Get so comfortable with yourself that when you invite, and this is the thing, when you invite somebody into your life to be a part of it, you could say, you know what, let's share this together, rather than saying, okay, well, if I get married, then I have to forego my career, or I have to forego the travel that I want to do, or I have to forego my spiritual beliefs. Relationship should not feel like it's taking away from who you know you are. It should be adding value
to it, right?
Instead, that person should come into your life and say, hey, I know you have these beliefs. Have you ever thought about these other ones? And maybe can we figure this out together, what we will believe now as a unit, right? Or you know what? You didn't take a lot of time off before. Maybe now you're dating somebody who who does a lot of self-care and self-care practices, which requires time off, and they can show you, here's something I can add value to your life with, so you can find that balance while still pursuing your career. So we really have to spend some time being comfortable with ourselves, so that when you get in this relationship, it actually works well. So when questions get asked, like in premarital counseling, I always strongly encourage people to do that. And the reason premarital counseling exists is to help people navigate and talk through those tough things, but also figure out how to communicate when things come up in the relationship that we haven't foreseen yet. But like big things we discuss in premarital, we'll discuss things like the number one reason people get divorced, finances. We discuss how you guys will handle finances. Something as simple as, I can think of a couple I have right now who's been married over 15 years, and each other has no idea the other's financial history, information, none of that. And why this is important is because I have also had a client whose partner passed away, who was in charge of everything. And they had no idea what to do with themselves.
Okay.
And again, you may not be in charge, but you should have knowledge of. You should say, oh, so-and-so has passed. Let me go to this bank and make them aware of this, and figure out how do we either switch this account or transfer them.
Right.
And so again, we'll also talk about things like gender roles within relationship, because a lot of us have expectations. Well, you're the woman, you should take care of the kids, right? And I still have this really great friend who's a colleague who, when we were going to PhD school, he was a primary parent for their eldest daughter. And that changed my whole view of who's better parent, meaning like, because we always say that it should be a woman's job, and his wife was full-time working while he was going to school. So it was a lot easier for him to
Right.
be the primary parent for their daughter. And he did such a great job. Now, it's to the point where in the household, usually it's a pull of one parent over the other. Oh no, it's definitely 50-50. And many say at times it's more him. Like all the kids want to flock to him.
Right.
And so again, his wife doesn't feel any type of way about that because that's what they decided and that's what worked for their relationship.
Right.
Then you want to talk about things like, do we want to have kids? When would we like to have kids? What are going to be our religious or spiritual beliefs? How are we going to invite our in-laws or extended family members to be a part of our relationship? Again, that's just some of the things we talk about.
But those are things that you need to talk about.
You should. I have found so many couples will be married and have never had some of those core questions you should really start to consider prior to connecting your life with somebody else.
Because those things become issues later down.
Huge issues. And that's the point of premarital counseling. How do we avoid something that we know can be catastrophic to be resolved prior to? Or
when you're thinking about premarital counseling, how long? What's the minimum amount of time?
I always tell people it depends on the couple, but I would say a minimum of 3 to 5 sessions. And why I say a minimum of 3 to 5 sessions, typically it's about 5 to 10. And because I've in the last 2 years, I've had some couples come in who've done the work prior to, so we didn't have a lot of the work to do.
Right.
When I go over, so there are some actual assessments I will give some couples or some questions I will ask. They already had working plans. They had talked through some of this because what they did was they looked up some information prior to, and they were doing the work.
Okay. Okay.
And so they were
so basically you're saying though, when I come, don't come with my date set already, like next week, Saturday.
That's usually not the best plan because those couples.
At this point, you're so invested, money, financially, everything.
Look, do you want me to tell stories about the ones who come and they have the date in like 2 weeks, and if they don't get some counseling, maybe the church won't marry them or something like that, and so they do it, and then we realize y'all really aren't on the same page, but they still go ahead with the wedding, and then a couple weeks later I see them because now they've had the biggest fight within the first 2 weeks of their marriage. Right. And because the cake was paid for and the dress was bought instead of them.
Right, and the invitations already went out, so we got to do this.
And then here's the other side of that. From those couples, I've also seen what happens at the other end of that. Within 6 months of the relationship, they're divorced. And I want to avoid that. I love to see people in healthy, happy marriages. So I would tell people, instead of spending so much money on this wedding, spend so much money investing in your marriage. And that requires things like talking to older generations about how did you guys do this? What were some ups and downs of getting to 20 years, getting to 40 years, getting to 10 years, or even 5? Because research has proven for us that most marriages, if they last the first year, then usually you would make it to 5. But if you don't do well the first year, you probably won't make it to the 5th year.
Wow. That's
right.
Yeah. So you got to really do the work. Do you think that it's possible to fall out of love with someone? Like you were together and everything, you were firing on all cylinders. How does that happen?
I think it happens because people stop talking and noticing the other person in relationships. So one of the things I find that we do most is
take each other for granted.
We take each other for granted. We believe that because the other person is around all the time, we just assume, right? And when we make assumptions, a lot of times we make fools out of ourselves for doing that. And so one of the things I tell couples that they should all have 2 things always on their relationship agenda, especially if you're married. You should have time for what I call relationship communication, which is a time once every, at least minimum every 2 weeks, where you're sitting down and discussing the business of the relationship. What I mean, the business of the relationship.
Right. What does that mean?
That is things like maybe we got to talk about finances. Maybe we got to talk about the kids. Maybe we got to talk about the fact that there's some changes going on in the workplace. Maybe we got to talk about the next goals we have and how we're going to meet those goals. So all of the business things that
Right.
do with a relationship. Then the next thing you should be doing is relationship fun time is what I call it. So twice a month at minimum, you should be doing something that is just fun together. Why? Because that helps you get to know each other. You could be in the same house with the same person for the last 10 years, and I can guarantee you the person you met 10 years ago is definitely not the person you see in today. I could put money on that, hands down. Why? Because every day we're evolving as humans. Every day. And it's so easy to miss little nuances like the fact that, oh, your partner used to love peanut butter and jelly at the beginning of the relationship. You used to make those sandwiches. And today you made one and they looked at you like, I don't like that
I
anymore.
haven't eaten this
In 5 years, did you not
right.
notice? Right. And then we say stuff like, well, how did you not notice this? I've been here this whole time, and it spirals from there. It's just the little thing, what we call relationship paper cuts, right? Those little things that frustrate us, hurt us. And so what you need and you should be doing is on those date nights, why they're fun time is because you're not dealing with business. The
Right.
business is handled. So now you can sit down together and just laugh, giggle, get to know
And
each
reconnect.
other. Connect, share stories, be vulnerable and intimate with the next person. So you could go for a walk together. Maybe it is you go ahead and you go out to dinner, or you make dinner together, or you watch a movie, whatever it is, so you could spend time together.
Or you can go ballroom dancing. You can learn how to do ballroom dancing. Can you tell I've been trying to convince my husband?
You know, dancing is so, believe it or not, there's an activity we do with couples, especially if they've been together for a while. My colleague taught me this, is if you want to know a lot about how intimate a couple is, let them dance. And so sometimes what we'll do is have you get up and dance in the session, and people will be like, why do I want to do that? Because I can tell so much by your intimacy, by the way you connect.
Wow. Even if you can't dance.
Even if you can't dance, because it's about getting together and finding synergy, right?
Right.
And again, there are ways I could tell stuff without you even opening your mouth about what's happening in your relationship. So,
I love that.
So
I know we're running out of time, and there's so much stuff, right? And we may not be able to tackle everything, but we got to tackle this. Okay. So you are in a relationship and you feel like the relationship should be moving to the next level, marriage.
Okay.
And then there's a proposal you accept, and now you're engaged. And I'm asking you this because I heard you talking a bit about it, but I had to step away. And we've been engaged, and we're still engaged. And it's been 3 years and we're still engaged.
Why?
At some point, do we say, you know what? Or you say, I've been here all this time. I put in all this time. And if we can be engaged for 10 years before we get married, we're going to be engaged for 10 years because I've already invested so much time.
This is why I think, again, so starting back to dating and the path for where we're going in the relationship. If we decided together that our goal of the relationship was marriage, and I think after that, and we decide we're going to get engaged, and I say we because one person proposes, the other person accepts. So again, it's reciprocal, it's back and forth. Then we should decide how long we want this engagement to be. If you find yourself engaged, typical engagements are about 1 year to 2 years, typically. When we see engagements lasting longer than that, it's usually for a few reasons. It's because sometimes people are planning a big wedding and they don't have the resources at the time. And so they're waiting on that. So it's not a matter of when, but it's kind of like, how can we do this? How can we afford this? And as soon as that money is there, then we do it that way. Then the other reason I see people engage for so long is they get so comfortable being comfortable. They get comfortable in the relationship because, some people like, we get engaged, so we good. So like this relationship solidified. I don't want to push the issue. I don't have to push the issue anymore. You got what you wanted, so we good to go. I would say that if you have been engaged probably longer than 2 years and you don't have a reason for that, and it wasn't a choice, because there are some couples who decide engagement is the pinnacle for them. That's their commitment level, right?
Okay.
Every couple is different. But if your goal was engagement to leading to marriage, and it's been over 2 years, and in that time y'all haven't done the work, had the conversations, I would say that's a red flag, because you're probably not going to end up getting married. There was a guy on the show in which you probably, I don't know if you heard, who had said that he had already had kids with his now wife, and they were engaged for like 10 years, and not until a minister said to him, why are you with this woman and doing all of these things, having a house, creating a home, but why won't you marry her? You got engaged, and
Right.
that was his motivation to get married. And I said to him, oh wow, I understand now y'all married, that's good, but why weren't you listening to her? Because she had been asking him several times before that, but not until somebody else he
From the outside,
right, asked, that he then went forward with it. And so to me, that's still a bit of a problem, because I'm thinking, what does that mean for your relationship? Because if you're not listening to your partner now, then will it always take another person to help you
to jump in and say, right.
Or if you can't have the conversation with your partner about, hey,
where are we going here?
We've
been engaged for 5 years now. We're not making any headway.
And this is the thing, before you engage in a conversation like that, let me put this out there, put this out there before somebody said I messed up the relationship. Before you have a conversation like that, you have to be willing to accept the answer and move on. And what I mean by that is move on and either be content with what is, or be willing to walk away from the relationship.
Right. Because the person could respond and said, you know what? It was in the moment, but I don't think I'm ready for marriage. You have to know what you're going to do if you hear that.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to know what you're going to do.
But
you have to know if you're going to say, you know what?
Yeah.
This is 5 years I've invested. Unfortunately, I'm going to call it a loss and I'm going to walk away.
And that's a hard decision to make, but
for sure.
It's about choosing you, because that person may not be willing to choose you. They chose you initially, but something is giving them
something changed along the way
as to why they don't want to go for it. And don't help, again, like I said earlier, don't help them decide or fight them to love you. Why would you do that when you know you're the prize? You are definitely the prize.
But here's the thing, you may not know you're the prize, which always goes back to what you're saying. You have to know yourself.
Right. You have to know
yourself. You have to know yourself. So I think that part of it too is because you know yourself, or maybe you don't know yourself, you may need to get some help. Absolutely. You may need to get some counseling individually to make sure that you are in the right space.
Yes, I think I tell people all the time, of course I'm biased because I'm a therapist, but I say what therapy is good for is it's to help you sometimes sit with those thoughts, be comfortable with those thoughts, and put a mirror up to yourself to make sure you're living up to what you say you want for yourself, not what I want, what you want for yourself. And there are times where, like, yes, I remember I was in session and I had asked the client a question, and she said to me, oh, wow, you're coming for me today. She was like, you're asking me some stuff I never thought about before. And that's what those moments are, those aha moments where you have to sit back and be like, what does that really mean for me? What do I want?
What does that look like?
So I would encourage anybody, as we're talking about love and marriage and dating, ask yourself, one, are you ready for it? And if you are ready, one of the things that's even a good thing about my book is there's questions and stuff in it. And one of the things I can think about a person can take is, what are the benefits of being in a relationship to you? There's a quiz we have about that. What are the benefits? You should be able to list 3 benefits of being in a relationship with you. And when the other person can say and match some of the even more benefits to that, then I think you should pursue a relationship. But if you can't,
I love that
of being in a relationship with you, then that's
so
the problem.
Before we wrap up, please, Dr. E, let's talk a little bit about this book. Hold it up and let's talk about this book. This isn't working for me. Well, listen, when you hear that, you know it's time to go.
And that's where the title came from. So this book is not just for intimate relationships, it's for all relationships in life, because we realize is that we always talk about relationships, but who taught us to have relationships? When did we actually get the fundamentals of how to do it and what we should be doing in them if we want healthy, happy, and long-lasting relationships? So it's a very practical guide for every relationship in your life, so that you
Not
can
just romantic ones.
not just romantic, for familiar relationships. It's also for workplace relationships. So any relationship you could think about, because how we see the world is that you're in a relationship with everything. Your relationship with yourself with food, your relationship with your money, you're in a relationship with yourself, your relationship with your partner, etc. So this is just a tool to help you have more loving, more fulfilling, and authentic relationships that are intentional, so you can be healthy and happier. So I am so excited that it's coming out. I just got my copy. So it's coming out March 26th, and it's available on all platforms, audio, book, Amazon. And I plan to have a book launch in a few weeks after it released, so that people will be able to buy a copy there and come in and talk with the authors.
Well, I hope you would consider having one, in Grand Bahama.
Oh, yes. Actually, I should do that. That
That
is a
should be
very
a
good idea.
consideration. That should absolutely be a consideration on the list. And
Absolutely. I
so,
like
what would be the cost? Are you able to say at this
Yeah,
time?
sure. The books are for $19.99, like on Amazon, and I think with taxes it may be like $22 or something like
Okay.
that. And so there'll be the same cost if you buy it from me directly. So
Okay.
yeah, and the audiobooks I think I'm not sure the audiobook price. I usually think it's about the same or maybe a little cheaper. So it's on
Okay.
all formats, and we are just I'm excited. So this is my
Yes.
first book, and it's been a labor of love, because I do value healthy relationships, and I hope everybody has a chance to have healthy, loving, lifetime, authentic
Relationships. Absolutely. But before we wrap up, I want to just talk to some of my ladies. You're out there and you've been single for a while. You're over 30, over 40. What are some tips, some things that you can, maybe share with them?
Perfect. So, because I fall in this group, one of the things I would say is that you have to get up and get out. So, one of the things I think that we struggle with, especially after the pandemic, is that we don't go anywhere anymore. And I don't know how to reach Netflix to tell them that they should start like a dating thing. So, if anybody knows anybody from Netflix, let me know. I have an idea for dating. But you have to get up and get out there, which means that put yourself in places and spaces that if your desire is to date and eventually get married, that you can meet people. That could be simple as the grocery store on days that like I know Sunday is a popular day. A lot of people go to the grocery store. Even middle of the week sometimes, like a midweek Wednesday, like a Wednesday in the evening. I notice people will get like the stuff they didn't get early in the week. Go to the gym or take a walk outside so you can be noticed. Go to local events, right? Join a local organization. So those are ways to put yourself out there. In addition to that, make sure you're doing the work on yourself so you know what you want to. Because the other thing is that you may meet the person and you don't know what you want. And so you can push the person away. So before you do that, one of the things I would suggest is write down what I call your non-negotiables, right? This is a list of up to 10 things, no more than 10 things, but it can be less than 10 things you want from your ideal partner. Now, do not put anything on that list you cannot do yourself. And think of your core values. Like you may want somebody who is spiritually led. You may want somebody who wants to be a parent. You may want somebody who has a want to communicate, right? Something as simple as that. So think of some core value stuff that matter to you that you can't live without. So they're not negotiable. And know what that list is, so that when you meet people, you can say, okay, they have my core values. We can share, we can align and grow together. Other things I would tell people who are on that path of single and wanting to get out there. So after you put yourself out there, after you've done the work on yourself, make sure that you're still doing some self-care. Because sometimes what we can do is when we're waiting for our person, we let ourselves go. So make sure you're doing little things to boost your mental health. That could be as simple as practicing some mindfulness, which is just deep breathing to connect your mind and your body and like kind of push out anxiety, depression, all that stuff. You could do stuff like starting to exercise so you can increase your good chemicals in your body, your good hormones. And maybe, again, create a sister circle. I love the name of your show. Hey, sis. When's the
Yes.
last time you had a good sister circle moment, right? Get a few girlfriends together and you guys just kiki all night, laugh about anything, maybe watch a movie together. So those are some things you can do while you get ready.
Thank you so much, Dr. E. And listen, I'm gonna have you back because we're gonna have to do this live because I know when this airs, we're gonna have questions. And so again, when you're watching this, while this is pre-recorded, if you do have questions, put the questions in the comments in the chat because we're gonna compile those questions and we're gonna have Dr. E back again, and we're gonna be asking her all of the questions that's on your mind that you want to talk about in terms of relationships, not just with a romantic relationship, but even just developing a great relationship with yourself. But I want to thank you so much for taking out time. If you know the kind of schedule that she has, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking out this time with us because I know your schedule is extremely busy. But this was such a good conversation, so many wonderful takeaways. So I want to thank you so much, Sisterhood. I want to thank you as always for tuning in. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did and as much as Dr. E did. And so I'm encouraging you to take away those nuggets and begin to apply them. So we are done. We're out of time, but as always, I got to send a shout out. I got to send a shout out to my crew, and that's Adriana, Andre, Destiny, and Antonio in Canada. And then y'all know I got to thank Mark Gardner. Y'all know why. I just got to thank Mark Gardner. But always, as always, I encourage you to be good to yourself, be good to others, treat each other with kindness. It doesn't cost us anything to be kind to each other, but also be kind to yourself. Be mindful of what you tell yourself about you, what you speak over yourself. And as always, you know what I like to say. I see you, I feel you, I support you. Have a wonderful Sunday, and thank you so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Oh, before I forget, as always, if you've tuned in today, even though this is not live, if you have tuned in today or you know of someone who is in need, they may need some groceries. We like to sow into someone and to help them if they are in need of help. So please, you can either send me a WhatsApp message at 826-6278, or you can send me a private message on Facebook, my Facebook page, Hey Sis Empowerment and Resource Center for Women. Send me a private message on Instagram. It's Hey Sis Empowerment. Reach out, let me know. Let's see if we can get some help for that person, or if it's you, don't be embarrassed. We're not judging. We're a sisterhood and we're here to help each other. So again, 826-6278, or my Facebook page, Hey Sis Empowerment and Resource Center for Women, or Instagram, Hey Sis Empowerment, or even TikTok, Hey Sis LG. You should be following them anyway so that you can tune in, so that you know when our next show is coming up, which is every other Sunday, but also that you can tune into our Hey Sis motivation moments that I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But again, thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Dr. E, thank you. And I'm telling you, you're going to be back again. I know that you are. We're going to make sure that our schedules align.
Yes. See you soon, guys. I'm looking forward to it.
Bye-bye.